you ever try to play again a piece that you learned a while ago, it will likely be a bit rusty, and at times it may feel even as if you're learning it again from scratch. But this is not necessarily a bad thing, and what's more, you can use that to your advantage. Today I'm pulling back the curtain and inviting you to have a look backstage at how I go about reviving one of my old pieces, and I will show you how you can use the exact same tactics as if you were learning a new piece, but with some tweaks that will make your work easier. Let's go! Hi there, I'm Zuzanna and I'm a professional harpist and a harp teacher. Before I share with you some of my practice in today's coffee break harp, I would like you to know this. Reviving an old piece is a really similar process to learning a completely new one. Getting any piece to the point where you can play it really well and have enough confidence to, for example, play it for others is quite a commitment, and it will require some regular and focused work. I've been talking about this process in one of my earlier videos where I was sharing with you 8 tips on how to complete a piece. So if you haven't seen it yet, make sure you check it out. I'll put it for you here and in the description of this video. Today I'm going to mention some of the tips from that video and show you how they work in practice in case of the early stages of reviving an older piece. The piece that I'm going to work on today is Nocturne by Glinka. This is a piece I learned all the way back in 2008. It's quite an advanced piece that requires a pedal harp. This Nocturne is a really lovely work, and I played it a lot since I learned it because with the right atmosphere it can work really well as a background music piece, and I've been doing quite a few background music gigs since then. After I played the Nocturne a number of times, it became the sort of piece I could play anytime and anywhere until the pandemic came, and I haven't had an occasion to perform this piece for the last 18 months. So I want to make sure that I give myself a good opportunity to revise what's in there and go through this process mindfully. Even though I could most likely plow my way through it from beginning to the end, I'm not going to do it. And although I used to play from memory all the time, I even had trouble finding the score when I started looking for it, today I'm definitely playing it with music. Like I said before, reviving an old piece is very similar to learning a new one. I still remember the words of one of my teachers, Charlotte Seal, who said that in fact you should go about this in the exact same way as learning a new piece, with the advantage that you know already what's difficult in there. So the first thing I'm going to do is to have a good look at the score, find the tricky spots and decide where should I start. So I have a pretty good idea about the tricky spots in this piece, and for me these are 2 major sections with semiquavers that I know will require more practice, plus a few bars here and there with a few pedal changes, which I know I will need to refresh my memory of when it comes to chord patterns and pedal changes. I'm going to go for one of these 2 sections, and I'll start from the one towards the end. That's also a good tip if you don't know where to start revising your piece. You can simply start from the ending because that's something that will always pay off. So this is still quite a big section, almost 2 pages, and I know that there are quite a few things to work on in there. I want to refresh what I know about the patterns in there so I can point my fingers to where they're going next and be really sure about the pedal changes too. In one of my scores I noticed a question mark next to one of the pedal markings, and that's something you definitely don't want. You want to be absolutely sure of your pedals, and same goes for any other markings. So I'm going to play this section really slowly, checking if all the pedals work and also trying to decide how to plan my practice on this quite big section and how to divide it into smaller bits to make it more manageable. One thing that I can definitely feel and hear is that I need to spend some more time working on the patterns between the chords and also on the pedals, because I was sometimes a little bit late, and here they have to be super precise. When reviving a piece, it's a good idea to check whether you need to change any of the things you were doing before, like your fingerings or your pedal markings, because as you are progressing, you will be looking at things differently and more solutions will become available in the future. So I had a quick look on whether I can make any changes to the pedal markings that I've got here to avoid any of the noises or last-minute changes, and I also checked about that question mark I mentioned earlier, which actually turns out to be in the right place. So I can erase the question mark. Pedal changes are quite personal and sometimes your preference changes with age, but actually when I had a look at the score, these pedal markings still work well for me and they tick all my priority boxes when it comes to pedal changes, so I'm leaving them as they are and I will just make sure to make them all in bright red when I'm transferring this copy to my iPad, which is something that I've been doing for the last couple of years, putting pedal markings in red. I will definitely also do some extra practice to make sure my feet go exactly where they need to be well ahead of time. For example, at the beginning of the fourth line, you've got to change E and B, but just one beat before your right foot was on A, and at the beginning of that bar, your left foot was on D, and that's quite a long way to go for your both feet. So I'm going to do two things. I will put a temporary sticky tab as a reminder of where each of my foot needs to go next. And then I'm going to practice that section, just these 2 bars, 1 bar and a half. So I'll start from beginning of line 3 and this pedal change at the beginning. I will go slowly and make sure that I move my feet to the next spot as soon as I can. My goal will be to do this 3 times correctly. Might need more times of repeating that, but when it feels good, I will fit that into the context of that page, and then I will check similarly the second page for any places where I might need those sticky tabs to help me practice and remember where my feet are going next. These could be my kettlebell practice sections, something I can do even if I've got a few minutes while I'm waiting for my tea. If you're not sure what's the whole thing with the kettle and the tea, check out my earlier video on completing a piece. Then I'm going to look at patterns and remind my fingers, especially in the right hand, of connections and similarities, which is also the kind of work I will need in the other 2 sections of that piece. While I'm progressing, it may be that I will need to move between the sections every now and then, so I don't get too tired of working on one place. So perhaps now I could show you some of that other section. This is the agitato section, and what I can remember from when I was first learning and then playing this piece is that this beat gets more and more agitated just before we go back to tempo. If you can remember how you practice these tricky places, that's also really valuable knowledge. So if you can find any of your lesson notes from that time or anything like that, that will be really helpful. I remember that in these 2 bars, in the 3rd line of page 23, I spent quite a little bit of time working out the changing patterns and also practicing placing of my fingers for these changing patterns, so this is something I'm going to work on now. For my fingers to learn to think of these patterns as groups and notice the differences, I'm going to practice my right hand as chords. Before I do that, I can see that in the left hand every second note stays the same, the other one is going up a step. That won't take a lot of my time, so I might as well do it now, so once I've got the right hand refreshed then, I can easily add that left hand in. I'm going to give myself some time between the notes of the left hand, but I will make sure to move my hand really fast from one to the other, while still playing slowly. And also, the advantage of recording my practice is that when I went back to check the way the things look like on the camera, I could see that my left hand was a little bit low, which in that section makes quite a bit of difference because your left hand goes up and down. So when you make sure that your left hand is exactly in the middle of the strings, you've got actually shorter distance to go. And that's why it's sometimes useful to record your practice just as I do now. So let's go. Left hand on its own. I can put the right hand in, so left hand feels a little bit better about having a company here. And again, I can do it 2 more times, making sure that everything is correct, and if it is correct, I can go faster the next time I'm doing it. And so on. So now I'll move on to playing the right hand part as chords, and at the same time I will explain the shapes to myself so my fingers can learn the patterns faster, and later in the future I will also find it easier to memorize, hopefully. So first chord, we've got a string of a gap between fingers 4 and 3, and then a fifth between fingers 1 and 3. The second chord is the same, but the highest note moves a step down and now makes it a nice familiar shape of a first inversion chord. Then the lowest finger moves a step up from where it was, and I get a shape where I've got identical gap between the notes. And in the next chord again, the highest note moves a step down, and now I'm getting another familiar shape, this time second inversion chord, so bigger gap between the two lower fingers. Again, lowest finger one step up. Here I'm back to the same shape as that chord from the beginning of the line. And again, thumb goes one step down. Again, lowest note goes one step up, and here I've got again the same shape as at the beginning of the line. And then the thumb goes one step down again. This may not seem like the most obvious set of patterns, but when you look back at the music, you will see that in this line, the third line on page 23, we get 4 sets of chords, and 3 out of them are following the same kind of pattern. It seems that when I first learned the piece, I noticed that the second set of chords was different, and therefore I put a circle around this chord to give myself heads up. Now, to train my fingers into getting into these shapes quicker, I can go again through these chords, again playing slow, but moving from one chord to another as fast as I can, looking ahead for these changes. And finishing on that latest chord to make sure that I've got the end of the phrase. Now that I explained these patterns to myself, I can almost play these 2 bars from memory with the right hand. I just need to check the pedal setting, and knowing all these similarities and differences in patterns, I can even stop looking at the music or at the strings and play this bit from memory. Well, I'm not going to play this whole piece from memory for quite some time, and I'm certainly not putting any pressure on myself about this. I wanted to show you that when you take the time to find these patterns, memorizing a piece will be so much easier. Okay, I feel ready to add my left hand now, still playing right hand as chords and making sure I move them both fast to be placed on the next group of notes. And after I've done that correctly 3 times, I can use my tried and true method of going backwards in the piece, so I could perhaps add 1 bar or half a bar before the section that I've practiced and play now that longer section. I will play this again at least 3 times correctly before I can add more, so the patterns have the time to sync. I will probably stay with the chords since these 2 pages all require my right hand to place 3 fingers at the same time, so I might as well practice it like that. And I know that if I do some of that chord practice, playing these patterns as written will be a lot easier because my fingers will know exactly where they need to go next. Even though I played this piece before, I will keep checking if I got all the notes and patterns right. However, I won't be adding any phrasing or dynamics until my fingers feel really solid. Of course, this is just the beginning of the work that I would be doing with this piece, but I hope this little glimpse of how I was approaching that will be still helpful for you in case you're wondering how to get started with an old piece. Remember these few things. However long you've played, approach your piece as if it was something completely new, but with the advantage of knowing what's tricky. Start from these tricky spots, try to remember the practice strategies you've used before, but keep checking every note, rhythm, and all other markings. You will likely get some new insights next time you play it. Now, let me know in the comments which piece are you hoping to revive, and which of these tips are you going to try first? I'll be looking forward to hearing from you and to seeing you here for another episode of the Coffee Break Harp. Make sure you subscribe so you'll get notified when the next video is out, and give it a like if you found it helpful. See you again soon. Take care for now. Bye!